The first thing Emily Carter noticed when she walked into Brookhaven Elementary that night was not the applause, or the paper stars taped to the walls, or the little banner that said Family Appreciation Night in crooked blue letters. It was the empty chair in the front row, the one Daniel had saved with his coat and then refused to move. Emily stood at the back of the cafeteria with cold air still clinging to her sleeves, 7 minutes late, smelling faintly of industrial detergent from the laundromat on Henderson Road, holding a small bouquet of grocery store daisies wrapped in plastic that had fogged from the warmth of her hand. She had run 2 blocks from the bus stop because her old Honda had refused to start again, and the heel of her left shoe had rubbed a blister raw against her skin, but none of that mattered. Lily was getting an award tonight. Her Lily, 12 years old, serious-eyed and brilliant, was being honored for winning the county science fair with a project built from borrowed library books, recycled cardboard, and the kind of hope Emily kept buying on credit. Near the stage, Daniel Carter sat in a charcoal suit beside Vanessa, his new girlfriend, both of them polished enough to look sponsored. Daniel turned when the cafeteria door squeaked, and his expression shifted into something that looked like concern from a distance and judgment up close. Vanessa leaned toward him, her blonde hair falling like a curtain, and whispered just loudly enough for the nearest parents to hear, "Poor thing. She always looks like life is winning." Daniel gave a small laugh, the kind he used when he wanted cruelty to sound reasonable. "Emily was never good under pressure," he said. Emily heard it. She had heard worse from him in quieter rooms, with fewer witnesses and more consequences. Still, the words landed. They always did. Not because they were true, but because they were aimed at the tired places no one else could see. She adjusted her coat, the navy one with the frayed cuff she had sewn twice, and searched for her children. Noah saw her first. He was 8, small for his age, with brown hair that never stayed combed and eyes that noticed too much. He lifted one hand from his seat near the second row, then looked at the chair Daniel had blocked with his coat. Lily turned next. For 1 second, Emily saw panic flash across her daughter's face, the fear that her mother had missed it, that work had swallowed another important thing. Then Lily saw the daisies, saw Emily's breathless smile, and her shoulders softened. Emily pointed to the back wall, as if standing there had been her plan all along. It was a little lie, one of the gentle ones mothers tell so their children do not feel the weight of adult failure pressing through the floorboards. The principal began speaking into a microphone that squealed before settling into a dull hum. Parents clapped. Folding chairs scraped. A toddler cried near the juice table. Emily stood beneath the basketball hoop, shifting the flowers from one hand to the other, trying not to think about the rent due Friday, Noah's inhaler waiting at the pharmacy, or the envelope from family court tucked inside her purse like a stone. Daniel had filed for more custody 2 weeks earlier. Not because he had suddenly learned Noah's medication schedule or remembered Lily hated peas. Because his accountant had told him what shared custody could do to his child support payments. On stage, Lily's name was called. Emily's heart rose so sharply it hurt. Her daughter walked into the light in a green dress Emily had ironed at midnight, and the room applauded. Daniel stood halfway, smiling like a man accepting credit for a garden he never watered. Vanessa clapped with her fingertips. Emily clapped until her palms stung. Lily took the certificate, but instead of looking at her father in the front row, she looked straight to the back of the room, where her mother stood alone by the wall. And in that look, Emily felt something no courtroom, no whisper, no unpaid bill could take from her. Her children knew. Even if the whole town saw a struggling single mother, Lily and Noah saw the woman who kept showing up, breathless, broke, and still holding flowers. After the ceremony, parents drifted toward the refreshment table in clusters, carrying paper plates of cookies and plastic cups of lemonade, speaking in the bright, careful voices adults use when they want every other adult to know they are doing well. Emily stayed near the back wall until Lily came down from the stage, certificate pressed against her chest, cheeks pink from pride she was trying hard to hide. Noah slipped through the chairs first and wrapped both arms around Emily's waist, careful not to crush the daisies. "You made it," he whispered, as if arriving 7 minutes late had been a rescue mission. Emily bent and kissed the top of his head. "I told you I would." Lily reached them a second later, and for a moment the noise of the cafeteria thinned around the three of them. Emily touched the edge of the certificate with one finger, reading Lily Carter, first place, Franklin County Student Science Showcase, and felt the sting behind her eyes before she could stop it. Your grandmother would have framed this before we got home, she said softly. Lily smiled, but her gaze slid past Emily's shoulder. Daniel was coming toward them with Vanessa beside him, his coat folded over one arm, the same coat that had occupied the chair Emily should have had. There is my scientist, Daniel said, opening his arms as if he had spent the last 3 months helping cut cardboard planets and testing homemade water filters at the kitchen table. Lily accepted the hug, stiffly. Vanessa leaned down toward Noah with a smile that did not reach her eyes. Your dad told me you have been having asthma trouble again. Maybe if your mom kept a cleaner apartment, that would help. Emily felt Noah's fingers tighten around her hand. The apartment was old, yes. The radiator knocked at night, the windows leaked cold air, and the carpet in the hallway smelled faintly of dust no matter how many times she vacuumed. But every sheet was washed, every inhaler was labeled, every prescription refill was tracked on a calendar taped inside the pantry door. Daniel glanced away, pretending not to hear. That was one of his talents, silence at exactly the moment decency became inconvenient. Emily could have answered. She could have mentioned that Daniel had missed Noah's last 2 pulmonology appointments, that he had once called the Blue Rescue inhaler the little plastic thing, that the cleanest apartment in Ohio would not change what a child's lungs needed in February. Instead, she looked down at Noah and said, we will pick up your refill on the way home, honey. Lily watched everything. She watched her mother swallow the sentence she deserved to say. She watched Daniel check his phone while Noah pressed closer to Emily's side. She watched Vanessa admire the certificate without asking a single question about the project. That night, after spaghetti with jar sauce and toast, because garlic bread cost an extra $3, Emily fell asleep on the couch with a laundry basket beside her and a stack of unopened mail on the coffee table. The television glowed blue across her face, making her look younger and more tired at the same time. Lily stood in the hallway in her socks, holding her award. Noah had already gone to bed with his stuffed fox tucked under one arm. For a long while, Lily did not move. Then she went to her room, opened the bottom drawer of her desk, and pulled out a plain blue notebook she had bought at the dollar store with birthday money. On the first page, in careful handwriting, she wrote, "Things Mom does that people do not see." She paused, listening to Emily's shift in her sleep, then wrote the first line. Mom came tonight, even though her feet hurt, and everyone looked at her like she did something wrong. She wrote the second line more slowly. Dad had a chair for his coat, but Mom stood so I would not feel alone. Lily stared at the page until the words blurred. She was 12, old enough to understand money was missing, young enough to still believe truth should matter if someone wrote it down neatly enough. In the kitchen, the refrigerator clicked on with a tired hum. A city bus passed outside, shaking the thin window glass. Lily turned to a new page and kept writing. By Monday morning, the blue notebook had become something Lily carried everywhere without letting anyone see. It lived beneath her science folder at school, under her pillow at night, and once, when Daniel picked them up for his scheduled Saturday afternoon, inside the lining of her backpack like a secret she was afraid the world would steal. Emily did not know it existed. She was too busy moving through the week like a woman trying to keep a house standing with both hands while pretending she was only dusting the shelves. At 6:15 every morning, she woke before the alarm so it would not startle Noah. She packed lunches at the counter under the yellow kitchen light. Peanut butter for Noah cut into triangles because squares made him say it tasted different. Turkey and cheese for Lily with the mustard scraped thin because Lily liked the flavor but not too much of it. Then Emily would pour coffee into a travel mug, stand still for 3 seconds, and close her eyes like prayer had become a place she visited standing up. Lily noticed everything. She noticed how her mother checked the price of eggs twice at Kroger before putting the smaller carton in the cart. She noticed how Emily smiled at the pharmacist when the refill for Noah's inhaler cost more than expected, then sat in the car afterward with both hands on the steering wheel, breathing slowly until her face became normal again. She noticed how her mother said, "I am not hungry yet," whenever there were only 2 pieces of chicken left. At night, Lily wrote it down. Mom gave Noah the last warm blanket and slept in her coat until the heat came back on. Mom told me my science board looked professional, even though she had glue on her fingers from fixing it after midnight. Mom called Dad 3 times about the pharmacy bill, and he sent a thumbs up emoji but no money. Noah had his own way of keeping records. He was not a child who explained feelings easily. Words came to him carefully, like birds deciding whether a hand was safe. Instead, he drew. On the backs of old homework sheets, on brown paper grocery bags, on the margins of school newsletters, he drew Emily in her laundromat apron with a cape made from towels, holding a shield shaped like a grocery receipt. Sometimes he drew Daniel too, tall and shiny in a suit, standing far away beside a car with dark windows. He never made Daniel look angry. That would have been easier. He made him look absent, and somehow that was worse. The first official letter arrived on a Thursday, folded inside a white envelope from the Franklin County Family Court. Emily opened it at the kitchen table while Lily pretended to read and Noah arranged crackers into a circle on his plate. The words were polite, formal, and cold. Daniel was requesting a modification of parenting time. Daniel was requesting a review of support obligations. Daniel believed the children would benefit from a more stable environment. Emily read that last phrase twice. A more stable environment. The apartment hummed around her, small and worn but alive. Lily's science ribbon hung from the refrigerator handle. Noah's winter boots sat by the door, drying on newspaper. A pot of tomato soup warmed on the stove because it was cheap, filling, and red enough to feel cheerful. Emily pressed one hand flat against the paper as if she could keep it from becoming real. Lily watched her mother's face change, not dramatically, not in a way anyone else would have noticed, but in the tiny collapse around the mouth that meant she had been hit somewhere no one could see. "Are we moving?" Noah asked quietly. Emily looked up too fast. "No, sweetheart. No. This is just grown-up paperwork." Grown-up paperwork was what adults called storms when they did not want children to hear thunder. Lily lowered her book. "Is Dad trying to take us?" Emily folded the letter with care, so precise it frightened her daughter more than tears would have. "Your father is asking the court to decide some things. That is all." But Lily knew it was not all. She knew because Daniel had forgotten Noah's school pickup twice that year, because he called Lily's project a volcano even after she explained 3 times it was a water filtration model, because he liked photographs of fatherhood more than the actual weight of it. That night, after Emily fell asleep at the table with a pen still in her hand and the court papers beside a stack of coupons, Lily opened the blue notebook and wrote until her wrist hurt. Then she tore a clean page from the back, handed it to Noah, and whispered, "Draw Mom exactly how you see her." Noah thought for a long time. Then he drew Emily standing in front of their apartment door, not with a cape this time, but with both arms open, keeping the dark outside from coming in. The next 2 weeks moved with the strange, heavy rhythm of waiting. Emily learned that waiting was not empty time. It was time packed too tightly with phone calls, forms, copies, signatures, receipts, and the quiet humiliation of having to prove she was not failing simply because she was tired. During her lunch breaks at the laundromat, she sat in the back office between shelves of stain remover and plastic garment bags, calling legal aid numbers from a list taped to the wall by the break room microwave. Most calls ended the same way, with polite voices explaining that they were full, underfunded, or unable to take her case before the hearing date. She thanked every person anyway. Thanking people who could not help her had become one of the small manners poverty demanded. On the 3rd Friday, the manager at the little law office where she filed documents at night gave her the name of a family attorney named Ruth Bell, a woman in her 60s who wore flat shoes, kept peppermint candies in her desk drawer, and had the calm expression of someone who had watched too many frightened parents mistake money for love. Ruth agreed to meet Emily for a reduced fee after hearing only half the story. "Bring everything," she said. "Every payment record, every school email, every medical note, every message from him." Emily brought a grocery bag full of folders because she did not own a briefcase and had stopped being embarrassed by practical things. Ruth spread the papers across her desk and read in silence while Emily twisted the strap of her purse until the fake leather creaked. Daniel had been careful in the ways careless men often are when they finally decide to look responsible. His petition used clean words: stability, structure, opportunity, best interest of the children. There was no mention of the missed pickups, the late support, the unanswered pharmacy texts, or the fact that he had never once stayed up with Noah during an asthma flare, listening to each breath like it was a fragile little machine that might stop if no one paid attention. Ruth looked up after 20 minutes and asked, "Does he know the name of Noah's medication?" Emily blinked. "I doubt it. Does he know Lily's school counselor? No. Does he know the name of her science teacher? Emily gave a tired laugh that broke halfway through. He thinks her project was a volcano. Ruth made a note with a blue pen. Then we will let facts do what feelings cannot. At home, Lily continued filling the notebook. She no longer wrote only what Emily did. She began writing what Daniel did not do, and somehow those pages felt colder. Dad asked what grade Noah was in. Dad said my science thing looked cute. Dad told Mom he was busy when Noah needed medicine, but he posted a picture from a steakhouse 40 minutes later. Lily hated writing those sentences. They made her feel disloyal, as if telling the truth about her father was a kind of betrayal. But every time she almost stopped, she remembered Emily standing at the back of the cafeteria with daisies in her hand, pretending she did not need a chair. Noah watched Lily write and added his drawings to the back pocket of the notebook. One showed Emily at the kitchen table with bills around her. A yellow circle of light over her head like the lamp was a tiny sun. Another showed the three of them in the old Honda, breath fogging the windows, all wearing coats because the heater only worked after 10 minutes. In that drawing, Emily was smiling. That was the part that made Lily stare at it longest. Their mother smiled inside broken things. The night before the first meeting with the court-appointed family evaluator, Daniel called. Emily put the phone on speaker because Ruth had told her not to have conversations she could not remember clearly afterward. Daniel's voice filled the kitchen, smooth and wounded. I do not understand why you are making this difficult, Emily. I am trying to give the kids a better life. Lily sat frozen at the table, her pencil hovering above her homework. Noah looked down at his crackers. Emily closed her eyes for 1 second. A better life is not something you announce, Daniel. It is something you show up for. There was silence on the line, then a soft, irritated exhale. You always were dramatic. Emily looked at her children, then at the blue notebook half hidden under Lily's math worksheet, though she still did not know what it contained. Maybe, she said quietly, but I know what our son takes when he cannot breathe, and I know our daughter stayed awake last night worrying about court. So if that is dramatic, I will live with it. Daniel hung up first. The kitchen became very still. Then Noah slid off his chair, walked to Emily, and pressed his face into her side. Lily did not say anything. She only opened the blue notebook and wrote one more line. Mom did not yell. She just told the truth, and Dad had nothing left to say. The meeting with the family evaluator took place in a beige office on the 3rd floor of a county building that smelled like printer toner, old carpet, and coffee that had been sitting too long on a warmer. Emily arrived 20 minutes early because being late had become something people used against her, and she had learned that punctuality was one of the few forms of armor that did not cost money. Lily sat beside her in the waiting area with the blue notebook zipped inside her backpack, one hand resting on it, as if it had a heartbeat. Noah leaned against Emily's side, quiet and pale under the fluorescent lights, swinging his sneakers above the floor because the chair was too high. Daniel arrived exactly on time, which was different from arriving early and somehow still looked like a performance. Vanessa came with him, though the receptionist politely explained that only parents and children would be included in the initial session. Vanessa smiled tightly and sat down with a magazine she did not read. Daniel kissed Lily on top of the head and ruffled Noah's hair, gestures that would have looked tender to anyone who did not see how both children went still beneath them. The evaluator, Ms. Andrea Price, was a soft-spoken woman with silver glasses and a stack of yellow legal pads on her desk. She spoke to the children first, then to each parent separately. Emily answered every question as plainly as she could. Yes, she worked 2 jobs. Yes, money was tight. Yes, the apartment was small. Yes, she had been late to school events before when a shift ran over or the bus was delayed. She did not dress the truth in ribbons, because Ruth had warned her that desperation often made honest people sound unreliable. When Ms. Price asked what Emily believed the children needed most, Emily looked at her hands before answering. They need consistency, she said. They need to know who will be there when they are sick, scared, proud, embarrassed, or just hungry after school. I cannot give them everything, but I can give them that. Daniel's interview lasted longer. Through the office wall, Emily could not hear the words, only the smooth rise and fall of his voice, the same voice he used with bankers, clients, and restaurant hosts when he wanted a better table. When he came out, he looked satisfied. That frightened Emily more than if he had looked angry. On the drive home, The old Honda's heater rattled and finally began blowing warm air after 8 minutes. Noah watched the gray Columbus streets slide by. "Is Ms. Price going to make us live with Dad?" he asked. Emily kept both hands on the steering wheel. "She is going to listen to everyone and help the judge understand what is best for you." That was the official answer. The real answer sat heavy in her chest. Adults with clean shoes and complete files were about to decide whether love looked stable enough on paper. Lily turned toward the window so her mother would not see her face. At home, while Emily made grilled cheese sandwiches and tomato soup, Lily took the notebook into the bedroom she shared with Noah. The room was small enough that opening the closet door meant moving the desk chair, and the wallpaper near the window had begun to curl from winter dampness, but it held their whole world. Noah's model airplanes, Lily's science ribbon, a jar of saved pennies, and a photo strip of the three of them from the county fair. Emily laughing with powdered sugar on her sleeve. Lily opened to a fresh page and wrote about the meeting. She wrote that Mom told the truth even when the truth did not make her look perfect. She wrote that Dad sounded perfect even when the perfect parts were not true. Then Noah climbed onto his bed with a crayon in his hand and said, "I want to add something." Lily gave him the notebook. He did not write much, only one sentence, in uneven letters that slanted downhill across the page. "Mom knows how I breathe." Lily stared at the words for a long time. It was such a small sentence, almost childish, almost simple. But she knew it was the kind of truth adults could spend hours talking around and never reach. Their mother knew the sound of Noah's good breathing and bad breathing. She knew when Lily was pretending not to be worried. She knew how to stretch $20 through 3 dinners and still make Saturday pancakes feel like a celebration. Down the hall, Emily hummed softly while stirring the soup, tired enough to lean one hip against the stove, but still standing, still making dinner, still keeping the dark outside from coming in. Lily closed the blue notebook and pressed it against her chest. For the first time, she wondered if maybe it was not just a secret record. Maybe it was evidence. The first recommendation from Ms. Price arrived by email 11 days later, and Emily read it on her phone in the break room of the laundromat, while 3 dryers thundered behind her like distant weather. The words were careful, professional, and devastating in the way careful words often are. The evaluator noted Daniel's stable income, his larger home, his flexible work schedule, and his stated desire to be more involved. She also noted Emily's demanding hours, financial strain, and reliance on public transportation when her vehicle was unavailable. None of it was untrue. That was what made it hurt. Truth, when arranged by someone who did not know your life, could become a mirror tilted just enough to make love look like weakness. Emily sat on a plastic chair beside a box of unmatched hangers and read the paragraph twice before the letters blurred. The recommendation was not final, Ruth reminded her later on the phone, but it suggested expanded parenting time for Daniel while the court reviewed support. Expanded parenting time. The phrase sounded gentle, almost generous. It did not sound like Noah asking if his inhaler would come with him. It did not sound like Lily going silent for an entire evening, then washing the dinner dishes without being asked because she did not know what else to do with. Fear. That night, Daniel called the children after dinner. He used his cheerful voice, the one that made everything feel like a commercial for a family that did not exist. He told them his house had a guest room now, that Vanessa had picked out new bedding, that there was a backyard with a fire pit and a television bigger than their living room window. Noah asked if the room had a night light. Daniel laughed softly. "You are a little old for that, buddy." Emily closed her eyes. Lily looked up sharply from the table. "He is not too old," she said. "He needs it when his breathing gets bad at night." Daniel paused, then said, "Well, we can figure that out." Figure that out. Lily wrote those words in the blue notebook before bed, pressing so hard the pen nearly tore through the paper. She added another line beneath it. "Mom never has to figure out what scares us. She already knows." The following Saturday was Daniel's first extended visit under the temporary arrangement. Emily packed Noah's medication in a labeled pouch, wrote instructions on an index card, then wrote them again in larger letters because worry made her repetitive. She packed Lily's library book, Noah's stuffed fox, 2 extra shirts, and the little gray blanket Noah claimed he did not need until the moment he needed it. Daniel arrived in a black SUV that looked freshly washed, stepping out with sunglasses in one hand and impatience tucked neatly behind his smile. Vanessa remained in the passenger seat, scrolling on her phone. Emily handed him the medication pouch. The blue inhaler is for quick relief, she said. The orange one is every night before bed. He should rinse his mouth after. If he starts coughing and cannot settle, call me. Daniel took the pouch without looking inside. I know how to take care of my son, Emily. The sentence floated between them, shiny and hollow. Noah stood behind Emily's leg, clutching his fox by one ear. Lily wore her backpack even though Daniel said she did not need to bring school stuff. Inside, beneath a sweater, was the blue notebook. At Daniel's house, everything smelled new. New carpet, new paint, new lemon cleaner, new rules no one had explained. Vanessa showed Lily and Noah the guest room with a smile practiced in a mirror. The bedding had navy stripes, the closet was empty, and on the nightstand sat a framed photo of Daniel with both children from 2 summers earlier, cropped so Emily's shoulder was barely visible at the edge. Noah stared at the photo for a long time. "Where's Mom?" he asked. Vanessa's smile tightened. "This is your dad's house, sweetheart." Lily heard the sentence and felt something inside her close like a fist. During dinner, Daniel asked Lily about school, then checked a message before she finished answering. He called Noah's inhaler a pump thing and forgot the orange one until Lily reminded him. Later, when Noah coughed in bed and whispered for the gray blanket, Lily climbed down from the other twin mattress, found it in his bag, and sat beside him until his breathing eased. In the hallway, Daniel and Vanessa laughed quietly at something on television. Lily opened the notebook under the glow of Noah's nightlight, the one Daniel had finally found in a kitchen drawer after saying twice that Noah did not really need it. She wrote one sentence, then another, each one small and steady. "Dad has a bigger house. Mom knows where the blanket is." By Sunday evening, Noah had counted the hours until home in the quiet way children count things they are afraid to ask about. He did not complain at Daniel's house. He said thank you when Vanessa handed him cereal in a white bowl that looked too expensive to touch. He nodded when Daniel promised they would do something fun next time, even though most of Saturday had been Daniel answering emails in his home office, while Vanessa told the children not to leave fingerprints on the glass coffee table. Lily watched her brother become smaller in that house, not because anyone raised a voice, but because everything there seemed arranged to prove that children were welcome only if they did not need too much. At 7 o'clock, Daniel drove them back across Columbus in the black SUV, the heater blowing too warm against Lily's face. Noah held his stuffed fox with both hands and stared out at the streetlights. Daniel talked about the upcoming hearing as if it were a business meeting he expected to win. "Your mom worries too much," he said, glancing in the rearview mirror. "Once the judge sees I can provide more, this will all settle down." Lily looked at his reflection. "More what?" Daniel blinked. "More space. More opportunity. A better routine." Lily thought of Emily's routine, the one no one praised because it was made of ordinary miracles. Medicine measured in the dark, socks warmed on the radiator, lunches packed before sunrise, bills paid in pieces, birthdays made beautiful with dollar store streamers and homemade frosting. She did not answer. When the SUV pulled up outside their apartment building, Emily was already waiting at the curb in her winter coat, arms folded against the cold, hair tucked messily under a knit hat. She looked tired. She also looked like home. Noah unbuckled before Daniel finished parking. "Buddy, wait," Daniel said, but Noah was already reaching for the door handle. Emily opened it from the outside, and Noah stepped into her arms with such relief that Daniel's mouth tightened. Emily held him for 1 second longer than necessary, then looked over his head at Lily. "You okay, sweetheart?" Lily nodded, though her throat felt full. Daniel got out and handed Emily the medication pouch. "Everything was fine," he said. "See, no crisis." Emily opened the pouch before answering. The orange inhaler was still inside its plastic sleeve and used. Her face did not change much, but Lily saw the color leave it. "He needed this last night," Emily said quietly. Daniel frowned. He seemed fine. Lily said he was coughing, but kids cough. Emily looked at Noah, who pressed his face into her coat. Then she looked back at Daniel. "This is not optional. He needs it every night." Daniel gave a small, annoyed sigh. "Emily, do not start. I am not starting anything. I am telling you how to care for your son." The cold air seemed to sharpen around them. Vanessa, from the passenger seat, looked down at her phone as if this were weather she preferred not to notice. Daniel lowered his voice. You are making me look incompetent in front of the kids. Emily's hand tightened around the pouch. No, Daniel. You did that by not reading the card I wrote for you. For a moment, no? One spoke. A bus hissed at the corner. Somewhere above them, a neighbor's television laughed through a thin apartment wall. Daniel's face hardened into the expression he wore when he felt embarrassed and wanted someone else to pay for it. We will discuss this in court, he said. Emily nodded once. We will. Inside, the apartment was warm in the uneven way old buildings get warm. One room too hot, another still cold near the window. Noah went straight to the kitchen table where Emily had left a mug of hot chocolate waiting, just warm enough to drink. Lily stood in the doorway, watching her mother unpack the bag, checking each item with quiet hands. The gray blanket, the library book, the extra shirts, the medication pouch. Emily paused over the unused inhaler, then set it carefully beside the court folder Ruth had given her. Lily walked to her room, pulled the blue notebook from her backpack, and returned before she could lose courage. Mom, she said. Emily looked up. Lily placed the notebook on the table between them. I think Ms. Ruth needs to see this. Emily stared at the blue cover, confused. What is it? Lily's eyes filled, but her voice stayed steady. It is everything people do not see. Noah climbed into the chair beside her and slid his newest drawing across the table, the one of Emily standing at their apartment door with both arms open. Emily opened the notebook. She read the first page, then the second, and then her hand rose to her mouth as if she had discovered a room inside her own life she never knew her children had been living in. Lily waited for her to say it was too much, too private, too grown up for a child to carry. Instead, Emily touched the page where Noah had written, Mom knows how I breathe. Her tears fell silently, one after another, darkening the paper at the edge. I never wanted you to worry about these things, she whispered. Lily moved closer. We already did. We just wanted someone to know the truth. Ruth Bell read the blue notebook in her office the following afternoon, one hand resting near a peppermint candy she had unwrapped and then forgotten. Emily sat across from her with Lily on one side and Noah on the other, the children pressed, close enough that their shoulders touched their mother's sleeves. Outside the window, downtown Columbus moved through a gray Monday, buses sighing at curbs, office workers crossing streets with paper coffee cups, the world continuing as if a family's future were not being measured in legal pads and court dates. Ruth turned each page slowly. She did not interrupt. She did not soften the silence with comfort. That was one of the reasons Emily trusted her. Ruth seemed to understand that some truths deserved room to stand upright before anyone tried to explain them. When she reached Noah's sentence, Mom knows how I breathe, Ruth took off her glasses and looked toward the window for a long moment. Then she put them back on and asked, Lily, did anyone tell you to write this? Lily shook her head. Did your mother know you were writing it? No, ma'am. Ruth nodded, then looked at Noah. And these drawings are yours? Noah held his stuffed fox tighter. Yes. Ruth's voice stayed gentle. Can you tell me about this one? Noah looked at the drawing of Emily in the kitchen, surrounded by bills under the yellow lamp. That is when Mom thinks we are asleep, he said. She sits there and makes the papers quiet. Emily covered her mouth. Ruth's expression changed, not into pity, which Emily had learned to hate, but into focus. The kind of focus a person gives a locked door after finding the right key. This notebook may not be admitted exactly the way you imagine, Ruth said carefully. Courts have rules, and rules are often where common sense goes to develop a limp. But it tells me what questions to ask. It tells me where the pattern is. It tells me what adults have missed. Emily lowered her hand. I do not want them dragged into this. They are children. They should not have to defend me. Ruth leaned forward. They are not defending you. They are describing their lives. There is a difference. That difference followed Emily home like a second shadow. She thought about it while folding towels at the laundromat, while signing Noah's reading log, while helping Lily glue a loose corner back onto her science fair display because the school had asked to keep it in the hallway for one more week. Describing their lives. Emily had spent years trying to keep her children from seeing the strain, but children lived inside the spaces adults tried to hide. They heard the pause before a mother said everything was fine. They noticed when milk was watered down just enough to last until Friday. They knew which smiles were real and which ones were built quickly for their protection. 2 nights before the hearing, Ruth called with her plan. She would bring the medication records, Daniel's missed support payments, the school emails, the text messages about the pharmacy bill, and the temporary visit report Emily had written after Noah came home without using his nightly inhaler. She would also ask the judge to speak with Lily privately, if the court allowed it, or at least consider a child interview through the evaluator. Emily stood in the hallway outside the children's room, phone pressed to her ear, listening to Ruth's steady voice. The apartment was quiet except for the radiator tapping like an old clock. Through the half-open door, she could see Lily asleep with one arm thrown over her forehead, already too grown in some ways and still so young in others. Noah slept curled around his fox, the gray blanket tucked under his chin. "I am scared," Emily admitted. Ruth did not rush to reassure her. Good parents usually are. That means you understand what is at stake. After the call, Emily went into the kitchen and opened the court folder. For the first time, she did not see only accusation in the papers. She saw evidence, not of her perfection, because she had never been perfect. She had snapped on exhausted mornings, forgotten permission slips, served cereal for dinner, and cried in bathrooms with the fan running. But she had shown up, again and again. The next morning, Daniel texted her a photo of the guest room at his house, the beds made, the curtains open, everything spotless. The message beneath it said, "This is what stability looks like." Emily stared at it while standing beside the stove, flipping pancakes shaped badly enough to make Noah laugh. Lily watched her mother's face. "Are you going to answer?" Emily set the phone face down on the counter. "Not right now." "What does stability look like?" Noah asked through a mouthful of pancake. Emily looked at the chipped plates, the syrup bottle nearly empty, Lily's notebook beside her backpack, Noah's blanket over the chair, the radiator hissing, the morning light touching all of it with a softness no photograph could prove. She smiled, tired and certain. "Sometimes," she said, "it looks like everyone knowing where they belong." The courthouse on High Street looked colder than Emily expected, not because of the weather, but because everything inside it seemed designed to make ordinary fear feel official. The floors shone under fluorescent lights. The benches were hard, polished wood. The walls held framed notices written in language that made people lower their voices without knowing why. Emily arrived with Ruth at 8:30 in the morning, wearing the same navy dress she had worn to Lily's award ceremony, freshly washed and pressed beneath a towel because she did not own an ironing board that stood straight anymore. Lily walked beside her in a gray cardigan, the blue notebook tucked inside a folder Ruth had given her. Noah held Emily's hand with his left hand and his stuffed fox with his right, his hair combed flat except for one stubborn piece at the crown that had refused every attempt at discipline. Daniel was already there. Naturally, for once, he had discovered punctuality, that miracle humans perform when witnesses are present. He stood near the courtroom doors in a dark suit, speaking quietly with his attorney, a tall man with silver hair and a leather briefcase that looked more expensive than Emily's car. Vanessa sat on the bench behind him, dressed in cream, her phone balanced in one hand, her expression arranged into sympathy. When Daniel saw the children, he smiled. "Lily, Noah, hey. Big day, huh?" Noah stepped closer to Emily. Lily gave a small nod and looked at the floor. Daniel's smile tightened. Ruth noticed everything. She always did. She placed one steady hand on Emily's shoulder and said, "Let him perform." "We came with records." Inside the courtroom, Judge Marjorie Whitaker sat beneath the seal of the state of Ohio, her gray hair cut neatly at her chin, her glasses low on her nose, her face calm in a way that made guessing her thoughts impossible. Daniel's attorney spoke first. He painted Daniel as a father ready to step forward, a man with resources, space, a flexible schedule, and a sincere desire to give his children more opportunity. He described Emily kindly enough to make every sentence hurt worse. Overextended, financially strained, loving but overwhelmed, working long hours, dependent on unreliable transportation. Each phrase landed on Emily like a receipt for every sacrifice she had made. She kept her hands folded in her lap, thumb pressed against the tiny scar near her knuckle from the night she had cut vegetables too quickly before rushing to her second job. Ruth did not object to everything. She let the words fill the room, then stood when it was her turn. "Your Honor," she said, "no one disputes that Ms. Carter works hard. No one disputes that money is tight. What we dispute is the idea that a larger house automatically means a more stable home." Daniel's attorney gave a polite smile. Ruth opened her folder. She began with dates, missed pickups, late support payments, school emails unanswered, pharmacy messages ignored, medical instructions not followed during the temporary visit. Daniel shifted in his chair, just slightly. Vanessa stopped looking at her phone. Ruth called Emily first. Emily answered as plainly as she had in Ms. Price's office. She did not pretend the apartment was bigger than it was. She did not pretend the car was reliable. She did not pretend she was never tired. When Ruth asked what happened after Noah's overnight visit, Emily looked at the judge and said, "His nightly inhaler came back unused. I had written the instructions twice." Judge Whitaker looked toward Daniel. Daniel's attorney stood quickly, saying it had been a misunderstanding, a minor issue during an adjustment period. Ruth waited until he sat. Then she asked, "Mr. Carter, can you name the medication Noah uses every night?" Daniel blinked. The courtroom became very still. He cleared his throat. "I would have to look at the label." Ruth nodded, as if the answer had been expected, which made it worse. "Can you name Lily's science teacher?" Daniel's jaw tightened. "I know the school. That was not the question." Emily felt Lily's hand slide into hers. Ruth turned back to the judge. "Your Honor, the children have not been coached. They have not been asked to choose sides. But Lily Carter has kept notes, privately, without her mother's knowledge. We are not offering them as a legal argument from a child. We are asking the court to understand what the children experience when adults use the word stability." Judge Whitaker looked at Lily over the top of her glasses. "Lily, would you be comfortable speaking with me briefly?" Lily's face went pale, but her fingers tightened around Emily's once before she let go. "Yes, ma'am." Ruth handed the blue notebook to the bailiff, who brought it forward. Lily stood near the judge's bench, small in the large room, her cardigan sleeves pulled over her hands. Judge Whitaker opened the notebook. She read silently at first. Then her eyes paused on a page, and something in her face softened by one careful degree. She looked at Lily. "Did you write this because someone asked you to?" "No, ma'am." "Why did you write it?" Lily swallowed. "Because people kept saying Mom was struggling like that meant she was not taking care of us. But struggling is not the same as leaving. My mom struggles, but she stays." Judge Whitaker asked Lily to read one entry aloud, only if she felt able. For a second, Lily looked back at Emily, and the entire courtroom seemed to narrow to the space between mother and daughter. Emily wanted to shake her head. She wanted to gather both children and walk out into the cold morning and choose hardship over exposure, because there are kinds of love that feel too private to be held up under fluorescent lights. But Lily's eyes were steady. Not fearless, exactly. Something braver than fearless. She turned back to the judge and opened the notebook with both hands. Mom gave Noah the last warm blanket and slept in her coat until the heat came back on. Lily read, her voice small but clear. "Mom told me my science board looked professional, even though she had glue on her fingers from fixing it after midnight. Mom called Dad 3 times about the pharmacy bill, and he sent a thumbs up emoji, but no money." Daniel shifted sharply. His attorney touched his sleeve, a quiet warning to stay still. Lily turned another page. "Dad has a bigger house. Mom knows where the blanket is." The sentence moved through the room with a softness that somehow carried more weight than all the legal language that had come before it. Emily lowered her eyes, not from shame, but because if she looked at Lily any longer, she might break open in front of everyone. Ruth stood beside the table, hands folded, giving the words room to do their work. Judge Whitaker looked at Noah next. "Noah," she said gently, "I see there are drawings in here. Did you make those?" Noah nodded from beside Emily, his stuffed fox tucked under his arm. "Would you like to tell me about one?" He hesitated. Emily felt his fingers search for hers and held them lightly, not pulling, not pushing. Noah pointed to the drawing Ruth had placed on top of the folder, the one with Emily standing in front of their apartment door with both arms open. "That is Mom keeping the bad day outside," he said. No one moved. Even Daniel looked at the picture then, really looked at it, perhaps seeing for the first time what his children had been forced to understand too early, that safety was not measured in square footage or newer furniture or a guest room photographed in perfect afternoon light. Sometimes safety was a tired woman in a second-hand coat, standing between her children and everything she could not fully control. Daniel's attorney cleared his throat and began to argue that children often romanticize the primary caregiver, that financial instability created stress, that expanded time with Daniel could relieve pressure on Emily. Judge Whitaker listened without expression. Then Ruth asked for permission to question Daniel directly on a few practical matters. The judge allowed it. Ruth approached with a single sheet of notes. Mr. Carter, what time does Noah take his nightly medication? Daniel looked toward his attorney before answering. Around bedtime. Ruth nodded. What time is bedtime for Noah on school nights? Daniel paused. 8:30? Noah whispered. 7:45. The whisper was not meant for the room, but the room heard it anyway. Ruth continued. What is the name of Lily's science teacher? Daniel's mouth tightened. I would have to check the school directory. What is the title of Lily's award-winning project? Daniel looked at Lily, as though the answer might be written on her face. It was something about water. Lily looked down at her hands. Ruth did not raise her voice. She did not need to. She simply placed the pharmacy records, school emails, and temporary visit notes before the court, one careful piece at a time. Dates, times, messages, silence where a father should have answered, effort where a mother had been called overwhelmed. When Ruth finished, Judge Whitaker removed her glasses and set them on the bench. Mr. Carter, she said, resources matter. A stable home matters. But this court is not persuaded that stability can be proven by income alone, especially when the daily responsibilities of parenting have not been consistently met. Daniel's face flushed, not with grief, Emily thought, but with the shock of being seen without the lighting he preferred. Vanessa stared at her lap. The judge ordered a recess before issuing her temporary ruling. In the hallway, Emily sat on the wooden bench with Noah against one side and Lily against the other. She did not speak at first. She only held them, one arm around each child, while Ruth stood nearby like a tired guardian with a leather folder. Lily finally whispered, "Are you mad that I wrote it down?" Emily turned to her daughter, and her voice trembled with all the love she had tried to hide behind brave faces and cheap dinners. "No, sweetheart. I am sorry you had to." Noah leaned his head against her coat. "But now they know," he said. Emily looked at the courtroom doors, at Daniel standing farther down the hall with his attorney, no longer performing for anyone. She kissed Noah's hair. "Yes," she whispered. "Now they know." When the courtroom doors opened again, everyone rose as Judge Whitaker returned to the bench with the blue notebook placed carefully beside her folder, not buried beneath it, not dismissed as childish clutter, but resting where everyone could see its worn cover and bent corners. Emily noticed. That first. She noticed because mothers learn to read rooms the way other people read weather, searching for danger, mercy, or the smallest sign that someone has finally understood. Lily stood close enough that Emily could feel the warmth of her shoulder. Noah leaned against Ruth's chair, clutching his stuffed fox under one arm and the unused fear of the morning under the other. Daniel walked back to his table with his attorney, his face arranged into stillness, but the arrangement did not hold. His jaw was tight. His eyes kept moving toward the notebook and then away again, as if a 12-year-old girl's handwriting had become something too bright to look at directly. Judge Whitaker began with the kind of calm voice that made every word feel heavier. She said the court recognized Daniel's income, his housing, and his stated willingness to become more involved. She said children benefit from meaningful relationships with both parents when those relationships are safe, consistent, and centered on the children's needs. Daniel lifted his chin slightly, as if the first half of a sentence could save him. Then the judge continued. However, this court has also reviewed the records presented today, including medical documentation, communication history, school involvement, support history, and testimony regarding the recent temporary parenting time. The evidence shows that Ms. Carter has been the parent consistently responsible for daily care, medical management, school communication, emotional support, and routine stability. Emily stared at the edge of the table. Routine stability. Two plain words, and yet they felt like someone had finally named the invisible labor that had filled every inch of her life. The lunch is packed before sunrise. The pharmacy calls. The bus rides in freezing rain. The fever checks at 2 in the morning. The birthday cupcakes made from box mix after a 10-hour shift. The judge did not make it sound glamorous. That was what made it feel true. Daniel's request for expanded parenting time on the proposed schedule is denied at this time, Judge Whitaker said. The existing primary residential arrangement shall remain with Ms. Carter. Mr. Carter will have structured parenting time, contingent on completion of a co-parenting education program and demonstrated compliance with the children's medical and school routines. Child support will be reviewed separately, with payment records entered into consideration. Daniel's attorney began to stand, but the judge lifted one hand. I am not finished. The room settled again. Judge Whitaker looked directly at Daniel. Mr. Carter, wanting to be seen as a father is not the same as doing the work of one. A larger home may offer space. It does not automatically offer attention. A flexible schedule may offer opportunity. It does not automatically create presence. Your children have described a mother who is tired, yes, and financially pressured, yes, but also reliably present. This court will not mistake hardship for neglect. Emily's breath caught so quietly that only Lily heard it. Her daughter reached for her hand beneath the table. Daniel looked down, and for the first time since Emily had known him, he seemed smaller without anyone trying to shrink him. Not ruined. Not punished in some dramatic way. Just measured accurately, which for men like Daniel could feel like a catastrophe. Vanessa sat behind him with her hands folded tightly in her lap, her polished sympathy gone flat. Judge Whitaker turned her attention to Emily next. Miss Carter, the court also recognizes that you need support. Not applause. Not pity. Support. Ruth gave the smallest nod, almost imperceptible. The judge ordered Daniel to reimburse outstanding medical expenses within 30 days, remain current on support, and communicate through a monitored parenting application for all child-related matters. She also recommended that Emily be connected with county family resources for transportation assistance and after-school care options. Emily had expected to feel victorious, but victory was too loud a word for what moved through her. What she felt was a loosening, like a knot inside her chest had been untied by careful fingers. When the hearing ended, Daniel approached them in the hallway. For once, he had no audience large enough to perform for. Only the children, Emily, Ruth, and the echo of what had just been said. He looked at Lily first. You should not have written all that down, he said, but his voice lacked its usual certainty. Lily did not hide behind Emily. She held the blue notebook against her chest. I wrote what happened. Daniel's eyes flickered toward Noah. Buddy, I did not know the inhaler was that important. Noah looked at him with the solemn patience of a child who had learned adults sometimes needed explanations they should have already earned. Mom knew, he said. That was all. No insult. No anger. Just the clean blade of fact. Emily almost felt sorry for Daniel then, which annoyed her because compassion had terrible timing. He had spent years wanting credit for love without accepting the homework that came with it. Now 2 children had handed him the grade. Ruth touched Emily's elbow. We should go. Outside. The February air was cold enough to sting, but the sky over Columbus had cleared into a pale, bright blue. Emily stood on the courthouse steps with Lily on one side and Noah on the other, the city moving around them in buses, car horns, and people rushing toward ordinary errands. Lily slipped the notebook into Emily's hands. You should keep it now, she said. Emily looked at the cover, at the bent corners and soft spine, at the record of every sacrifice she thought had gone unseen. No, sweetheart, she said, giving it back gently. You keep it. But from now on, we write better things too. They did not go home right away. Ruth insisted they stop at a diner 2 blocks from the courthouse, the kind with red vinyl booths, chrome-edged tables, and coffee so strong it tasted like it had been brewed during a legal emergency. Emily tried to say they should not spend money, but Ruth gave her a look over the top of her glasses that ended the argument before it became respectable. I am buying pancakes, she said, and no one in this family is allowed to object to free pancakes. Noah ordered chocolate chip pancakes with whipped cream because victory, even the quiet kind, apparently required sugar. Lily ordered scrambled eggs and toast, then ate only half because the morning had left her hollow and full at the same time. Emily wrapped both hands around a mug of coffee and watched her children breathe, chew, blink, exist safely across from her. It should not have felt miraculous, but it did. For months, every ordinary moment had carried a question mark. Dinner, homework, bedtime, the bus stop, the pharmacy. Each had been shadowed by the possibility that a judge might decide her love was too tired, too poorly dressed, too financially stretched to count as stability. Now the question mark had not disappeared completely, because life was never that generous, but it had loosened its grip. Ruth slid a folded copy of the temporary order into her folder and tapped it once. Keep records. Use the parenting application. Do not argue by text. Let facts do the heavy lifting whenever possible. Emily nodded. She had learned that facts were like canned goods in a storm, not glamorous, but necessary. When they finally returned to the apartment, the place looked exactly as they had left it that morning. Breakfast plates in the sink, a blanket half slipping from the couch, Lily's science ribbon tilted on the refrigerator, Noah's sneakers abandoned in the hallway as if gravity had personally offended him. Nothing had changed, and yet everything had. Emily stood in the doorway for a moment, breathing in the familiar smell of tomato soup, laundry soap, and old radiator heat. Home had never looked beautiful in the way magazines understood beauty. It had chipped paint near the baseboards, a kitchen drawer that stuck, and a window that needed a towel along the sill when it rained. But it held their lives without asking them to prove they deserved shelter. Noah ran to the refrigerator and taped his courthouse drawing beside Lily's ribbon. In the drawing, Emily stood between two doors. One was dark and closed. The other was open, with yellow light pouring through. Lily placed the blue notebook on the kitchen table, then opened to a fresh page. Emily sat beside her, suddenly afraid of what her daughter might write next. Lily dated the page carefully. Then she wrote, "Today the judge said Mom's hard days did not mean she was a bad mom." Noah climbed onto a chair and added beneath it, "We got pancakes." Emily laughed so unexpectedly that it turned into tears before she could stop it. Lily leaned into her shoulder. Noah patted her arm with sticky fingers and said, "Happy crying is confusing." Emily wiped her cheeks and kissed his forehead. "Most crying is confusing, sweetheart." That evening, she made macaroni and cheese from the blue box, added frozen peas because motherhood apparently required optimism in vegetable form, and let the children eat on the couch while watching a movie they had seen at least 6 times. Her phone buzzed once with a message from Daniel through the parenting application. "I will complete the class. Please send Noah's medication schedule." Emily stared at the words for a long moment. There was no apology, no revelation, no grand transformation wrapped in courtroom lighting. Just a man, finally forced to ask for information he should have known. She typed the schedule clearly, attached a photo of the prescription labels, and sent it without adding the sentence she wanted to write. Growth, she was beginning to understand, sometimes looked like not handing people extra weapons when they had already dropped plenty at your feet. Later, after the children were asleep, Emily took the blue notebook from the table and read it again from the beginning. This time, the pages hurt differently. They were no longer proof of everything she had failed to hide. They were proof that love had left tracks. In lunchboxes, in pharmacy receipts, in warmed blankets, in ugly pancakes, in showing up breathless with flowers. She turned to the newest page and picked up Lily's pen. Under Noah's sentence about pancakes, Emily wrote one line of her own. "I thought I was carrying them alone, but they were holding me too." She closed the notebook and placed it on the shelf between Lily's science medal and Noah's jar of pennies. Outside, Columbus settled into a cold, ordinary night. Inside, the radiator clicked, the dishes waited, the bills still existed, and tomorrow would demand all the usual courage. But for the first time in months, Emily walked to the children's room without fear sitting on her shoulders. Lily slept with one hand beneath her cheek. Noah's fox had fallen to the floor, and Emily picked it up, tucking it gently beside him. She stood there in the doorway, the same woman the world had misunderstood, not richer, not magically rescued, not suddenly untouched by struggle, just seen. And sometimes being seen is where a family begins again. Spring did not arrive all at once in Columbus. It came in hesitant pieces, a warmer afternoon between cold mornings, a line of green pushing through cracked dirt beside the apartment steps, sunlight lingering a few minutes longer over the grocery store parking lot, where Emily counted coupons against the steering wheel. 3 weeks after the hearing, life had not become easy, because easy was apparently reserved for people in furniture commercials and children who had not yet opened a bill. But it had become steadier. Daniel completed the first parenting class and sent messages through the application with the stiff politeness of a man learning that records had consequences. He asked for Noah's medication schedule twice, which annoyed Emily, but he also used the orange inhaler correctly during a Saturday visit and sent a photo of the checklist with every box marked. Lily studied the picture for a long time before saying, "He is trying because someone made him." Emily stirred soup at the stove and answered honestly, "Sometimes that is where trying starts." Lily did not look satisfied. but she wrote it down anyway on a new page in the blue notebook. Not every entry was about pain now. That had been Emily's condition, though she had made it gently. If the notebook stayed in their lives, it could not remain only a museum of what hurt them. So Lily began recording other things. Mom fixed the Honda with help from Mr. Alvarez downstairs, and it only cost $40 and one banana bread. Noah read 3 pages out loud without stopping. Dad remembered the nightlight this time. Mom laughed so hard at the broken pancake that she had to sit down. The first warm Saturday in April, Brookhaven Elementary held its community science showcase, and Lily's water filtration project was displayed on a table near the front entrance with a blue ribbon beside it. Emily arrived early for once, almost absurdly early, 35 minutes before the doors opened, carrying a tray of store-bought cookies she had transferred to one of her own plates so they looked less like they came from aisle 7. Noah wore a button-down shirt he hated and sneakers he loved. Lily wore the green dress from award night again, but this time she walked differently, not bracing for embarrassment, not scanning the room for empty chairs or sharp whispers. Daniel arrived 10 minutes later, alone. No Vanessa, no polished entrance, no expensive coat occupying his seat. He paused near Emily, holding 2 cups of coffee from the shop across the street. "I did not know what you drink anymore," he said, and the sentence was clumsy enough to be almost decent. Emily looked at the cup he offered. Medium coffee, cream, no sugar. He remembered that much, at least. "Thank you," she said. Daniel looked toward Lily's project. "She did a good job." Emily followed his gaze. "She did the work." He nodded, accepting the correction without defending himself, which was new enough to count as whether worth noting. When Lily saw him, her expression shifted through caution, surprise, and something softer she did not yet trust. Daniel walked over and stood beside the display. Instead of calling it cute, instead of pretending knowledge he did not have, he read the entire project board. Every label, every chart, every handwritten note. Then he asked, "Can you explain the charcoal layer to me?" Lily blinked. Emily watched from across the room as her daughter began speaking carefully at first, then faster, her hands moving as confidence returned to her body. Daniel listened. Not perfectly, not magically, but actually. Noah tugged Emily's sleeve. "Is he being different?" Emily looked at Daniel leaning down to hear Lily over the cafeteria noise. "Maybe a little." Noah considered this. "Different is weird." Emily smiled. "Most important things are." Later, when the showcase ended and the cookies were gone except for one broken oatmeal raisin nobody wanted, Lily packed her display board, while Noah collected stray napkins like a child employed by invisible management. Daniel said goodbye, without making promises too large for the moment. He simply told the children he would see them Wednesday and reminded Noah to bring his gray blanket if he wanted. Noah's eyes widened. "You remembered." Daniel swallowed. "I wrote it down." After he left, Lily stood beside Emily in the hallway where paper butterflies covered the wall. Some were colored carefully inside the lines. Some were wild storms of crayon. All of them were taped up together anyway. Lily opened the blue notebook and wrote while standing. "Today Dad asked me a real question." Then she paused and added, "Mom let him try, but she did not disappear to make room for him." Emily read the sentence over her shoulder and felt the quiet ache of being known too well by someone still young enough to need reminding to bring a sweater. At home that night, Noah taped a new drawing to the refrigerator. This one showed Emily, Lily, Noah, and Daniel standing in separate colors under the same sun, not holding hands, not pretending everything was fixed, just facing the same direction. Emily studied it while the children brushed their teeth. The picture was not a fairy tale. It was something better, or at least something more honest. A beginning without forgetting the middle. She opened the notebook to a fresh page and wrote one line before turning off the kitchen light. Healing did not erase what happened. It taught us how to live without letting it own every room.